This edition of MacVoices TV is brought to you by Drobo, the world's best data storage experience. Want to know more about how to travel with your Drobo? How to set up Time Machine with your Drobo? How Drobo works to protect your data? Visit drobo.com/tips and facts for the answers to these questions and more. This is MacVoices TV at BlogWorld Expo and New Media Expo in Las Vegas. I'm Chuck Joyner, and we're going to rehash a discussion we had last year at BlogWorld with Mr. Chuck Tournous. Chuck, it's good to have you.
Thanks, Chuck. I'm glad to be here again.
Okay, so do it for me.
I'm Chuck Tournous from Random Access. That's 2 M's, 2 C's, 2 S's. And I'm also a contributing editor on the Mac Observer at macobserver.com.
And you look so dapper in a jacket. I'm really impressed.
Well, I knew I was going to run into you this trip, so anything I can do to impress you.
Oh, that's good. Well, the audience is very impressed, I'm sure. Chuck, last year we were here talking about social media in business because that's part of what you do for a living. It's sneaking into what I'm doing for a living, and I think it's probably sneaking into what everybody does for a living. What have you seen change both in the year since we talked and also here at BlogWorld?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. It is sneaking into what everybody's doing for a living. And the idea now that I'm not the kind of business that needs to know about social media is kind of eroding. Everybody needs to know about social media. The decisions we need to make now are how actively we want to pursue it. And I think the smart companies are realizing that social media needs to be a part of a larger strategy. And you can't just say, we have a social media policy. Or we have a social media strategy. What you need to do is have a strategy, an overarching strategy that includes social media. And I think we're starting to see that realization come to a lot of the companies that are here. So as last year it was, well, we're dabbling and what's the ROI and should we be here or not? This year it's more, okay, we understand we need to be here, so how do we do it? How do we get over the internal legal compliance risk people hurdles? How do we figure out how to do it right out in the space so that it doesn't backfire on us? But it's no longer a question of whether we should be doing it. It's how. And in terms of the ROI question, there was one quote at one of the seminars that I saw today that said, you know, that's kind of the wrong way to look at it. You don't go to your IT department and say, what's the ROI on IT? It's just something you need.
You kind of took someplace I wanted to go right out of my mouth, because I've been to a couple sessions where there's a lot of ROI discussion. And, you know, I had the same reaction. It's like, okay, what's the ROI of my telephone, of my fax machine, of my email address? It's quickly getting to the point that it's just something you have to be doing.
You do have to. And there are ways to look at it from an ROI perspective, from a marketing perspective, because that's an element of it, absolutely. So, you know, you can look at things, well, did it increase sales, for instance, and if you can break that out and attribute it directly to social media, then you're ahead of the game. But did it increase links to things that I put out on my tweets or my Facebook posts? And you can measure it that way. Another great measurement, I think, is the idea, did it reduce calls to my customer service center? Did it reduce the touch points of people having to come to me through more traditional channels, which are far more expensive, to try to deal with my company? And if the answer to that is yes, then even though you may not be able to attribute it directly to an increase in sales, it's still providing a great benefit for your company.
Chuck, a couple ways to go with this. How do you feel about, you were talking about the service response. People in the social media space are going to expect a very, very rapid turnaround on that. It's not like an email or even a phone call where, okay, we'll get back to you and you'll hear from us in a week or 2 weeks or whatever. You know, you send a tweet out to a customer service situation in your company or mine, and they're looking for a pretty quick turnaround. How big a problem is that, you think, for traditional businesses to address this? I mean, this means they're going to have to assign people, or depending on the size of the company, a team to address those things, or it's going to turn into a negative very quickly.
Right, because if you don't respond quickly, somebody else will, and they may not provide the answer that you want. So you do have to make sure you're monitoring what's being said about you and dealing with it quickly. For larger companies, I think it's a smaller issue because they already have a big infrastructure in place to handle their call centers or their email responses. So the idea of giving that to them as well, because hopefully there's going to be a balance in things, you know, not an overall increase in volume, but rather a shift from maybe your phone channel to your your Twitter channel, your social media channel. And those are the people who already know what they can say, what they can promise, how to refer people to different areas when they can't handle an issue. So there's a smaller training hurdle that you have to get through for that. For smaller companies, they're going to have to figure that out. I mean, it may fall into the marketing function, may fall into the PR function, but the important thing is that you need to look at the tools that are out there that will enable you to find out what's being said about you, to make sure you're listening to this, and then make a commitment that you're going to respond quickly. Otherwise, what could be a real big benefit for you is going to backfire.
And the other interesting thing about it is it's going to backfire in public in a big way because of the nature of social media. It's one thing to trade an email with have an email exchange with a customer. They have to consciously decide to make that public in order to get back at you if you don't do something well. In the social media space, the odds are that the conversation is going to take place in an area where anybody can go and look at it.
Yeah, and last year the mantra was the conversation's happening anyway, you might as well be part of it, because that's how you're going to respond and handle it. But if you are out there, you're also inviting a larger conversation to occur. You're kind of generating those comments, you're providing a forum for it, so you may get more volume than you expected, and it becomes more important than ever to stay on top of the conversations.
How are you and your company looking at the fact that I guess there are a number of ways that are being contemplated by companies getting a social media presence? There's the informational aspect. There's the service aspect we just talked about. There's the sales aspect, which seems to be a dirty word in so many corners in social media because people don't want to be pushed. And I personally think the informational is good, but at some point, as salespeople, we know we have to close the deal, and trying to find how to do that in the social media space is a little challenging right now.
Yeah, well, and I can't speak for my company directly, but I'll sort of give you what I see in as a larger industry perspective. And what some companies are doing is kind of putting their toes in the water in a non-controversial way, in a way that provides the least amount of risk. So it may be a corporate blog or Facebook page that tries to just provide some general information about the company and its products and services. Or a lot of companies have philanthropic arms. So, you can put something out about your philanthropic efforts, your charitable efforts, and that doesn't mention your products or services. So you don't need to deal with the regulatory issues that way. And I think that's enabling some companies to sort of get a good foundation to get comfortable with the medium, find out what they can do, what they're going to encounter, what hurdles they're going to see, technological glitches they may come against, and try to finesse it or refine it from there, and then they can start moving into these other areas, either more promotional information about their services, or outright sales efforts.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Companies to do this successfully are going to have to become part of the social media experience and the landscape. They just can't blast out information on their schedule. They're going to have to engage people in a little different way, or at least be willing to if the people want to engage them. And that's not something that many companies have had a lot of experience with.
No, and that goes back to the ROI question. If I'm not promoting my services and products, I'm not going to generate income from those efforts. But you have to look at it more holistically. One of the sessions that I attended talked about the idea of a company who blogs and tweets about things that have nothing to do with the service that they provide or the products they deliver. It was a lot of the employees in the company are avid skiers, I think it was. So they have a skiing blog on a company that sells soda. It's not going to directly impact the sales, but if it engages their audience and makes the company more interesting to their customers, or seen as more human, then eventually that is going to build loyalty. Probably loyalty more than anything else. And if you can get loyalty out of your customers, then you'll have customers for a long time.
And you're humanizing that company, and in an era where it seems like everybody's hiding more and more behind their websites and 800 numbers and phone trees that are a disaster to get through. If you can figure out a way to humanize your company, you at least have a leg up, I guess, a little bit of a competitive advantage, or a different mindset, perhaps.
Yeah, sure. I mean, everybody wants to deal with somebody they know and like, and the more personal you can make that relationship, the stronger it's going to become.
What have you thought of this year's BlogWorld? How did you find it different from last year, and did you find it a valuable trip to make?
I did find it a valuable trip to make. I will stubbornly insist on calling it New Media Expo because it makes it sound more serious to me. I don't like the connotation of BlogWorld. So maybe that's just a little personal bias, but we'll have to live with that. I think the show floor where we're recording this is great this year. A lot of very interesting companies. The enthusiasm is high. Energy is high. I think you can always judge the success of an exhibit floor or even a show itself by the number of free giveaways people are giving and the quality of giveaways. Because if people feel good about the industry, they want to be part of it. They see that there's money to be made and land to grab, so to speak. And they give things away. There's a lot of giveaways here. There's T-shirts. There's not just the little pens and keychains and mints. There's some bigger things here. So people obviously feel very good about being here. I thought the sessions were really good. My first day, I gave a scorecard. I went to 4 sessions. I said 2.5 of them were very good, and that's fine. If you get 2.5 sessions worth of good information on your first day, that probably made the trip worthwhile right there. Still, some things that are a little bit uneven, but it's still a nascent industry, and I think you're going to find that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you mentioned BlogWorld versus new media. So a lot of us here are podcasters, video and audio. Obviously, the bloggers are here. And there is some overlap, but there's clearly also a difference in what we all do to a large degree. And trying to figure out how to arrange that from a conference perspective, how to deliver value in the conference sessions for that varied an audience, that's a challenge.
Yeah, and I think it's a challenge that may get harder as the years go by, because the 2 tracks right now, the idea of social media, particularly on an enterprise level, and then blogging and podcasting, which is more of an individual effort for the most part. I think at some point those 2 tracks may become, irreconcilable, and maybe we'll have to split again. But even for me, a lot of the people that I know at BlogWorld, I know from my Macworld connections, and I haven't seen many of them this year because we're on different tracks, and the sessions that interest them aren't the ones that interest me. So there's already a pretty clear dichotomy here, I think, on what's going on.
There's a couple interesting barometers there. You're right, because you and I haven't run into each other that much in the sessions, and the giveaway measurement is also a very interesting one. But of course, that's what the parties are for at night, so that everybody can come together.
Right, and that's where I wind up seeing people, although to be honest, maybe it's just age, I don't know, or maybe it's just the expanse of a convention in Las Vegas, but I'm pretty tired at the end of the day, and these things, feel like a pretty long walk, so...
Yeah, in Vegas, you look over and say, well, it's just over there, and in 40 minutes you're still walking. It's right. Not easy.
Yeah, and and they intentionally make it hard to find your way out of the casinos. So it's, cutting through Luxor to get over to the, New York or whatever. You feel like a rat in a maze sometimes.
Well, Chuck, I know we'll see you back on the Mac Roundtable. I know we'll see you back on the Mac Jury. Sorry about that. And hopefully back on MacVoices, and definitely back here at BlogWorld and New Media Expo next year.
Sounds good. It's a date.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices TV at BlogWorld and New Media Expo. We wish you were here. He's Chuck with Tournous. Thanks for watching.
MacVoices TV is part of the MacVoices Group and a member of MacVoices.